Hello and welcome to Retake the Week, although it is going to be a special one as we're retaking 2 weeks. We had a little bit of a man down situation 1 week ago, but thankfully he's back from the dead. It is my co-host joining me, as he always does on this show. It's Quacke. How are you feeling, man? Gotten better?
Yes, I've survived COVID. Surprisingly, I survived COVID. No, I was just knocked out last weekend pretty much completely. But now I'm fine. I'll try not to cough too hard on the recording itself. But I'm fine.
Yeah, trying to get that splatter all over the screen as well. That'd be fun. But no, we had an interesting couple of weeks. I thought the craziest part is we took 1 week off, let you recover, and it happened to be like the busiest weeks it seems to have been, because usually we have a couple things to talk about. We talk about a player, and it's like, yeah, cool, a nice half-hour, 40-minute discussion. I think this time we're going to run over an hour, and we may have done just on last week's episode, because there was a lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff we want to talk about. And let's go straight to the first one. Just not waste any more time. Elisa Masters Espoo, which, call it Helsinki. Like, it's just funny at this point. Like, if you look at where Espoo is, it's basically Helsinki, and you wouldn't have such an amusing name. Like, I'm sorry if it's this like inconsiderate to the Finns, but it's just funny to me that it's called Espoo. Event happened. Furia won it. A lot of interesting things to look at, because we had some new rosters debuting, had some big performances, some unexpected performances, and most importantly, Furia got it over the line. I think that's something we've kind of got used to them not doing, is they'll face lower opposition, be the heavy favourites, and then go home in groups, have a disappointing quarterfinal, something like that. It looked like we were headed that way, but they pulled it back, made it all the way through, and won the grand final fairly convincingly. So, a bit of a shock there. Furia running things back with their interesting new setup. Art IGL, Fallen, just the AWPer. Do you think this will last, Quack? Do you think they got like a long-term foundation secured here?
I think they definitely looked alright. Like, Furia always have something alright looking on paper. It just doesn't materialize. Like, isn't that kind of the thing? You have like proper tier 1 talents in Yuri Kisarato. You have Fallen, the legend of the game. And then you have pieces who, should be good enough. And it's not even really on them, like, that things fail. Like, before, you wouldn't have blamed Cello for the team failing. Like, you wouldn't have blamed Safe or Drop for the team failing. They just did somehow anyway. But I think it's a good start. It could just be a honeymoon. Like, this is just one event, and it was also riddled with other upsets. Furia are by no means the only talking point. Like, there are at least 2 more who are definitely worth talking about. But it's all right. I'd be excited if they keep this going. I'm not sure what they have coming up next.
Yeah, I think
nothing.
They're not at the World Final, so I think it's just prep time. Take some time off, time with family, hopefully around Christmas, and then get back on the grind for that major cycle, which for them will be huge. For everyone, it's huge, but for them especially if they want to really prove themselves. There's probably more events in between. I've not got the calendar in front of me. I'm not going to bother. But I think the big focal point for a lot of people,
the only one, I think.
Katowice, of course, yeah, that's always an early in the calendar. But the big one is always the major. But no, there were some other teams. So we saw the debut of Ents with Glaive, which could have been better, could have been worse. I think is the best way to think about it, because they've got 2 best-of-3 series wins against Fnatic, against Gamer Legion. Gamer Legion are kind of a weird one, because they're like ranked fairly highly. No one really thinks they're a threat. And yet every event, they show up, they do upset a few people. So I think Ents keeping it together, knocking them out in that decider match, it's not going to paint them as like, oh, they're back, they're still a top 1 contender. Glaive has just smoothly sailed in. Like, no, of course not. It's not actually proved it that much, but it's a nice little start. I'm going to put it that way. If they'd gone out in dead last of their group, just gotten absolutely clapped, didn't look functional as a team, we'd have some warning signs already. But I think this is all right. It's not the greatest show or advert for Glaive, but at least it's a nice little debut for him on that. Like, I think that's the best way to look at it, really, at this point. It's something to build off, but nothing to get too overhyped about.
Yeah, no. Madden had an amazing event, so clearly, like, Madden and, like, it at least based on this event alone, Glaive hasn't ruined any of the players who were good previously so far. I mean, he still knows how to utilize them. Not like he still knows how to utilize them, is what I'm trying to say. Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not like it was like, oh, it's just snappy system. They aren't actually cracked. Like, no, they are. Sunpious,
Mm.
Nerds, and Madden, top 3 performance of the event, actually decent.
Yeah, surprising that
Um,
Nuts didn't top it though. It was Madden at the top. That's something you're saying. It's a bit of an overperformance. Yeah.
Bit of an overperformance. It was mostly groups. Now that I'm looking at it, their one playoff game, Madden wasn't really there. But I mean, they did play 7 maps in the group stage.
Yeah, it was a
So
long slog for them, yeah.
yeah, and Madden was pretty big. So yeah, big ups for Madden, in particular.
But yeah,
Uh,
no, go on, go on.
and it's obviously have something to build on. Like, ENCE is a great team. This is no secret. And for me, Glaive is sort of the last. It's almost the last straw for him. I think I talked about this last time, maybe. If this was announced,
It was. We
where
did definitely talked about it. It was pretty much a
yeah,
known thing.
like yeah, can Glaive do something without Sonic? This is the test. Let's see if he does it.
Yeah, well, good. One upset that we didn't really see coming: Mouse Sports falling in groups. I think all predicated on that opening BO1 loss. Really, if you see that they lost to Apex in multiple overtimes, which we weren't really expecting. Now we do know this was the last event they would play with Frozen, and perhaps that was some kind of a factor. Because Frozen didn't play that spectacularly. Like, he didn't play badly, but he wasn't able to really carry them forward. They lost a pretty convincing series to Furia in the end. Not the greatest look for them, but at least it's a fresh break. It's like, yeah, we play bad, replace a player, reset, we got the time off. Let's move on from there. I think we can make a lot of excuses for teams at this event.
Of course. This is the best part of the season because nothing matters. It's just it's I think Frozen did play pretty bad. Like, it's not like he was below 1.0 while you had Torchi insertion, like, actually with good ratings where you expect them to be. So, and just Frozen was nowhere.
Oh, yeah,
Frozen
sorry, I
absolutely
missed how bad
disappearing in
that
the final
Furia
game.
series was. My bad, yeah.
Yeah, and in the prior 2 series, he wasn't particularly good either. Like, he was bang on average. I think Frozen disappearing is probably the reason probably the reason Fury are in the playoffs, if I'm gonna be completely honest. Like, they played well, but like Mouse with Frozen showing up, that's a different thing. That's a like huge difference. There's a reason why he's like in phase now, because he was like the heart and soul of why this Mouse team was so good. So no, definitely Mouse and ENCE would probably be the 2 teams. Like, looking at the teams heading into the event, you would have probably said, well, Mouse and ENCE is probably going to be the final. Maybe Complexity can get there. And
Yeah, maybe Complexity can make a run, yeah.
Yeah, Mouse, Complexity, and ENCE. Mouse and Complexity went on in groups and lost in the quarterfinal after being upset by Havu. I think Havu needs to be talked about a little bit.
Yeah, Havu we're going to touch on. Quickly want to kind of give them some attention is Complexity. They end up going out in last place, which no one saw coming, considering their form coming into this event. I had them maybe not pegged as champions. I didn't think they were the best team here, but I thought even with this more difficult of a group, Apex shouldn't be an issue. Well, we saw how wrong that was. Furia tend to underperform perennially. I think maybe at this point we just all overrate them, just based on the names. So Complexity, having this disappointing a run, only ended up with a -2 round differential. Like, it feels like it ended up being a group of death that no one saw coming. Like, in that sense, the teams that were there all slightly underperformed or overperformed, end up making a very flat line across the group in terms of the quality of play, and they just came out worse for it. I think it's not excusable. They should be expecting more for themselves, but it's not exactly a bottom of the barrel, end of the world, typical Complexity, throwing everything away sort of performance, right?
No, it all hinges on the best of 1 loss against Furia. They choked on their city side. They choked every round.
Everyone.
They had an 8-4 lead. No, they did. They had an 8-4 lead heading into their own city side on Ancient, and then Furia just swept it. Yes, 9-0.
Oh, yes, this
Furia
game.
just swept
it
completely.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, it's definitely self-inflicted. But then once you lose that best of 3, or best of 1, you are now in a best of 3 for elimination with Mouse. Like, the Complexity aren't winning that. Like, once that Furia game was done, Complexity were out, as far as I'm concerned. Like, they could have put up a fight. They did put up a fight. It was a 1-2, but and close scores at that. But like, at that point it's excusable that they would go out last because that's just where they were ahead of that game.
Okay.
Against a much better team on paper who also underperformed, and it was competitive. I think a lot of it hinges on that Furia best of one, where they just choked, and I do wonder like if that opening game is a best of 3.
Oof.
When you have an 8-4 lead and you completely choke an Ancient City side, if there are 2 more maps to be played, I'm pretty sure Complexity could have pulled through that. Like, I feel like they are a team who have actually played some pretty decent best of 3s in recent memory. Like, they've actually, a lot of their series feel like 3 mappers where they can sometimes pull through and at least win 1 map, maybe both, and actually take the series even after a loss. I feel like you can't really discount them after just 1 map.
Their team, we used to pretty quickly discount them after 1 map. Mental strength was not something we associated with NA in general, but specifically Complexity, it was like, yeah, there's a good chance they'll just get thrown out with the trash, or in a online qualifier where the favourites just get upset 2 or 3 times. And no longer do we really say that. We do really think of them as a team who can bounce back, who can show more fight. I think a part of that has been Elisia's influence, but also just self-belief. Once you start winning, once you start actually getting things on the board, they start believing in themselves a little more. So I'll give them that. We probably see more of them if this was a more robust format, but that opening best of 1, it's not a biggest event. We allow for this sort of thing. It makes sense. So let's touch on the biggest upset of all this. Havu. The part that I can kind of think the universe gets to get away with is them beating Gamer Legion in best of 3, because I still don't think much of Gamer Legion. Despite what I said earlier, they do show up at events, they do somehow win games. I still don't think much of the roster, and I think they lack a superstar, they lack consistent firepower. Partially those are related, but not entirely. They don't have that much depth of talent. And the fact that Havu can then go out and beat them 2-1 isn't that shocking. Beating Ents 13-6, Fragger for Fragger, is where the problems come up. Like, how does that happen? We saw them come crashing back down to earth in the playoffs, get absolutely blown out by Furia. That one had me a little frustrated. That game is what really, that's the one where you go, God, I wish we had best of 3. That's the one that really wound me up, because I'm like, they should not be getting through the playoffs predicated on such weak victories.
Yeah, that's probably true. Like, in some sense, it's probably true. I think it's an interesting team. I think it's cool for Hava to do something like on home turf. I think home turf is definitely a big thing. I read the interview with Slowy after they beat Ens, and like a big thread running through that interview was like, we beat Ens. Ens are the Finnish team. Like, we know they think we are dog shit. We know that, like,
with good reason, yeah.
Yeah, no, but like especially because it's like the 2 Finnish teams.
Yeah.
And he also I couldn't find the quote now, but he did say something about like it's like it's very important with our individuals, especially Otto ND. He has a lot of experience and he could do a lot of things. But Habu, not anymore, but quite recently had very experienced players in their roster, especially with LAN experience, because they had X7 and Ariel.
They did,
particularly. Yeah. And that didn't really do anything. So like
yeah, we saw a lot
it's interesting to see who stepped up.
We saw a lot of nothing from X7 and Ariel post the LXCB era. We hoped there'd be something like a sort of small golden generation, would be generous, but like a silver generation perhaps of Finns like coming through, playing with those guys. Like, we discover more from like the deeper in the scene, bring up some of those IGLs. But realistically, all that's really come of it is I think Banjo's an alright player. When I watched him in academy teams, he was solid. I think Otto is it's not that he's a bad AWPer. I just think he has inconsistencies that don't make a tier 1 position tenable. But when he's on, he's about as good as you can expect from like a non-superstar AWPer. You know what I mean? Like, he's never hitting the ceilings of simple, but if he's on a good run, yeah, he'll look like a solid Sumpires type, and that's nice. And I think they got it all clicking at the right moment here. But all in all, it's very deceptive, very weak in historical fact, like who they actually played and beat. And yeah, it's nice for them to go on stage and be like, hey, yeah, Finland, we're the Finns. That's cool. But like, yeah, it's not a great run. It's not something I really want to see much more of.
we probably aren't going to see much more of it.
No,
So
no, we're
we
not.
can rest easy knowing that at least.
But yeah, the team that surprised and then kept on surprising was Apex, led by Nork, in terms of the fragging at least.
Yes.
Not actually the IGL, and not historically a guy you'd expect to be like the biggest volume fragger, but definitely the most impactful when he's on this team. Because yeah, when Jacob gets 25, he gets 25. Like he seems to just do it a lot of the time. When Nork gets 25, the team all of a sudden looks like they got an extra dimension to their play, and that's what you expect from a good AWPer. Pretty impressive run. I mean, I hate second place players getting the MVP, especially if they're not going to outperform everyone in the grand final. That should be the most important game, the one where you actually win that MVP. But I digress. He got the MVP. He played great. He's the reason they made the grand final. I'm sure you're very familiar with his play and his history. Do you think this is a resurgence from not just Nork, but Apex overall?
Apex overall, it's so hard to tell because like what's going on with Sense? Not even Sense knows what's going on with Sense. I think he said so in one of the interviews. Like he doesn't even know what's going on. He's still on trial. He doesn't know if things are going up or down. They do seem to be able to build like decent teams off the back of Jacob and Knock and maybe Kixen to a degree.
Well, Kixen's calling, so I have to give him some credit, right?
I do. I'm just trying to think. Was he there in Paris? But he was, right. Yeah, he was. So like off the back of Jacob, Knock, and Kixen, they seem to be able to like relatively, consistently build decent teams. Like at first they replaced JL, obviously going to Navi, and Tsatzanito. Did you know his name is pronounced Tsatzanito?
I've been calling him Cashanito for years now. Tsatzanito.
Me as well. Tsatzanito, like pizza, like Tsatzanito.
Tsatzanito.
Like, yeah, all right. I digress.
Okay, yeah. Anyway, that's a mouthful.
JL left for greener pastures. Katsanito came in. You see, Tsatzanito came in, did well. Stiko left, kind of unexpectedly. Stiko being a pretty solid, stable player. Sense came in as seemingly like an emergency solution. It worked. Kuben left. Mither came in. It worked. Like, they seem to be able to do something pretty consistently, and I think Nog is definitely central to that, having extended his contract by 2 years now. Yeah, I rate Apex for like building solid, contender teams at this sort of Espoo level. Didn't expect this run. Didn't expect this performance from Nog. Not sure he can replicate it, but like, I rate him. I rate him quite a bit.
Okay, well, that kind of wraps up the event. It wasn't the biggest event, but it was pretty cool to watch all these teams who were like... There's a lot of Tier 1.5 at this event, there's some Tier 2, and there are some Tier 1 teams who have... Well, a lot of the time I do feel like Fury live and die by the invite, and it's nice to see them here actually not shit the bed against lower tier opposition. Against teams who, constantly pay the iron price rather than the gold price. It's nice to see them actually get the win. So, congratulations to them. Great to see some of these teams actually kind of outperform expectations, but also we also have the context that the ones we expected to do something and didn't, they're new rosters, they're changing rosters. It wasn't perhaps the most important event for them. And let's move on to the other biggest news of last week, because this was huge. We got a lot of news from ESIC. It wasn't just the one story. It ended up developing into 2 stories, but then there's a lot of threads to go back on, which I'm going to invite you to do very shortly. But let's briefly touch on what happened. So, the first big one for me was the Joel news. Now, Joel's a player I've profiled, he's a player I've looked into a lot. He's a player we've discussed heavily, and you've even featured in the video where I profiled him. Like, he's a guy we're very familiar with in terms of his play on the server. The problem is, there's been a lot of talk about stuff happening off the server. Now, ESIC initially provisionally suspends him. Whilst they go and investigate all this, there's some players talking about him. For sure, we basically knew he'd match fixed or placed some dodgy bets in terms of the rumours, but then there's also some deleted tweets accusing him of cheating. There's all this other stuff going on in the background. It got really messy. So to reach the end of this, and it turns out they don't have enough evidence of match fixing to ban him, but they're using time served essentially as like a punishment for the bets he definitely placed. So we'll get more into that. I'll let you let loose. The other one, the big one, is that the Sergey of it all has been addressed. The Akuma team. Sensei, not Sergey. Bloody hell. Too many S's. The sensei of it all. Yeah, that roster, because Sensei's the biggest name. No one's going to really recognize the other ones. Demq, who is the one everyone else accuses and talks about, wasn't wrapped up in this in the end. But yeah, a bunch of those players got banned for 2 years. The org owner who ran 3 different named teams, very suspicious that he keeps having to change that. He's also been found to be incredibly guilty of a lot of stuff. Literally cheating, match fixing. Basically, 4 of the most despicable members of the community have received 2-year bans or lifetime bans, which is great. That's great news. There's more to it. There's all the reports are, of course, published. I invite everyone to go read them. I'll try and maybe even link them in the description. The exact wording, phrasing used by ESIC in all these cases, especially the Joel one, which is what I'm going to go back to, because this is one you have strong thoughts on. So I'm going to let you take it away, set it up however you need to, and take your time with it, because this is a big story.
Yep. I have some strong thoughts about this. First of all, I can just briefly touch on the Sensei and Akuma thing. I feel like ESIC, like, they are doing all right, they're improving, but they still have some ways to go. I feel like sometimes some of the things are ridiculous. They mention Akuma by name in their statement on Sensei, Throne, Darkside, and Native once, because they say, we investigated into Akuma, Project X, and Majesty, like the 3 affected teams. Akuma are not mentioned again at any point. Like, some people think this was a ban because of what Akuma did in the CIS RMR with the cheating accusations. It has absolutely fucking nothing to do with that. Like, Akuma as a team, Demka, and whoever else was on there, Jackie, and I forget the rest of the names. They have nothing to do with the conclusion of this investigation. Except, of course, if they played on Project X. I believe, like, Project X being the predecessor of Akuma, I think Jackie was there. But basically, Sensei's ban kind of ties into Joel's ban. Sensei and a bunch of other players got, like, multiple year-long bans. I believe Sensei got a 2-year ban for, and I quote, attempted engagement in match-fixing activities during several LAN events with Team Project X. Project X also being the team that this owner guy is involved with. I forget his name, but he's strange man. What is interesting there is that they have specifically mentioned that he attempted engaging in match-fixing activities. I don't know exactly what that means. If that means like he heard a rumor that somebody was going to fix a game and he wanted in on it, so he talked to them and there's, like, evidence of a conversation. Perhaps that's the evidence they are talking about. But he receives a 2-year ban for this. Now, Joel, there was evidence, and he was charged for betting-related offenses, where he placed bets on matches he was playing in himself, 2 bets against his own team, and 17 bets on various CSGO matches. Now, I saw instantly a lot of people misquoted this and said that Joel was betting against himself 17 times. He was like, he betted against himself 17 times and it's not match fixing. He did it twice, which is also suspect, but, like, get your facts straight if you're gonna talk about this, because there's a lot of, like, emotions around this. I understand that. What I think has happened, the way I'm judging this, he has received a let me do the math in my head. August until January, like, it's practically a 4.5-month-long ban, where about 3 months of it he has already served, and during that time was also when he played in the Blast qualifier. Of course, he was disqualified in the end, but he has received a less than 5-month-long ban, if I'm doing the math right, for betting against himself, which some people might think should be concrete evidence of match fixing. And I probably think, I think he probably did. Like, it is incredibly suspect to bet against yourself. And that's why betting related offenses are bannable in the first place, because even if you can't prove that fixing has happened, which I think is what's happened here, they legally cannot prove that he did something to influence his own bet, like, to his own gain. They legally cannot prove that. They can only prove that he placed a bet against himself. And I think they are just, like, ESIC don't have a leg to stand on if it were to come to court. They need to be cautious, and they need to say, we know you betted. Like, we know you bet on these games. There needs to be some repercussions, because that is against our code of conduct, but we cannot put a hardcore ban on you for these offenses because it just wouldn't hold up in court because we haven't conclusively proven that you did actually lose on purpose, if that makes sense. Like in a vacuum, you can be dumb as fuck and just think we are not going to win this game. Oh god, we're playing against Big Clan and we're just some like tier 2 mix. Well, we're obviously going to lose this game, but I'll do my best. And then you bet on the other team because you have a gambling addiction and you just want to bet. Like in a vacuum, you could do that without knowing it's wrong. And just think, well, this is just the reality of the situation. I'll still do my best, but I'm going to bet on this game. So I just think ESIC don't really have a leg to stand on. The gripe that I have with this, because in fairness to ESIC, I think that they are doing good. I think the fact that they have been actually putting out actual bans recently with actual match fixing bans, actual like investigations, that's an improvement over radio silence that we had before. And I think maybe these shorter ban lengths are an effect of actually learning from their past. But what I think is so strange is that this ban for Joel is inconsistent with the bans that they put out 3 years ago against 35 Australian CSGO players. Some of them are now part of Rooster and were part of Rooster even then. It actually heavily affected the Australian scene because a lot of their like actually good players were caught up in like 1 year, 2 year long bans that could probably be explained more by stupid mistakes than like widespread malicious activity. So for these sets of bans, they put out a template of this is how long your ban should be depending on what you have done. So they would be, like to quote ESIC, this was so they would be consistent and proportional to the offenses. So the lowest possible ban you could have gotten in this investigation was 12 months, which was for betting on matches that you yourself were not playing in. But of course, it could be this situation where like, a player bets on a game that he knows the result of, even if he's not himself playing. Maybe he knows 2 other teams are fixing. So he gains from this. 12 months. Fair, probably. At the time, I thought this was like a fair ban length, but as things have come forward and they have been very inconsistent, I'm starting to question it. Betting on your own games would have been 24 months, and doing aggravated betting, like betting a lot, would have been 36 months. And crucially, betting against your own team even once is 48 months or 4 years of like not being allowed in ESIC events at all. And there were players who actually like got this ban. I think there were like 6 or 7 Australian players who got this 4-year ban. I should mention these guys did match fix. Like coincidentally, I know someone who met these people and they straight up just said, "I regret nothing. I earned thousands of dollars of this, and I have no intention to ever be a pro player again." But they're fine with the sanction. But some of the shorter sanctions, like there were definitely people here who were like in teenagers, like, and didn't receive any communication from ESIC before their ban was issued. Joel got like a whole 3 months to defend himself, or like he got like a whole big ass period to present counter evidence and
you got a proper due process in that sense.
Yeah, I'm rambling here, but I swear I'm coming to an end. If the same template ban was applied to Joel as ESIC did 3 years ago, Joel would have had a 4-year ban. He just would have. And if the same procedure was applied, he would have had nothing to do about it. He couldn't have cooperated to reduce it. He couldn't have done anything to oppose this ban or to cooperate with ESIC to provide further evidence. Like maybe there are other people he could have implicated or presented counter evidence to like counter his own ban. Nothing at all. But instead he was given a 4.5 month ban, which was also reduced because of his like high level of cooperation according to ESIC. In the end, one of these bans is wrong. Like, according to ESIC, one of these 2 ban situations is incorrect ban. Like, it's an incorrect ban. Either some of the Australian bans are too long or Joel's is too short. And it could be they just realized, fuck, we were wrong in Australia 3 years ago. Let's fix this by doing something else with Joel. I just want transparency around that, because otherwise it's just weird and it just invites all of this criticism for like hypocrisy. Like there's no communication. There's a lot of communication. There's no communication. Like they put up press releases and they correct people when they write incorrect headlines on news pieces, but then it's like, what actually happened? Can you tell us?
Yeah, we need to.
Like,
That's something I actually
yeah.
need to find out about. Because if it is quite simply, there was a ban length specified, it was applied 3 years ago. Will they retroactively change things according to a new process if that sort of punishment length has changed? They've got better ideas. They prefer to do things a different way. I mean, I personally prefer a world where players get a chance to defend themselves. They get to present evidence. They get to actually show contrition. They get to help with investigations. That's a far more, I think, tenable way to do things than just blanket bans based on what they find with no cooperation possible, and honestly, the larger forces at work never getting any sort of attention, because clearly, in some cases, yes, it's stupid teenagers doing stupid shit. Let's put it simply. But in some other cases, we know, for example, in places like China, places like Russia, there's more going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. You know, team owners being corrupt, certain organized crime networks being involved. Like, there's some more stuff going on than simply just players getting greedy in some cases. So, opening more channels of communication, saying that you can be, somewhat forgiven or allowed to at least cooperate and make the situation better for yourself, is, I think, far more positive than just smashing bans on people willy-nilly. But no, it'd be very, very important, or very, I think, interesting as well, to hear ESIC come out and say, this is why these are different, this is what's changed in our mentality, and we will be retroactively applying certain mitigating factors to those bans that were so much longer, because it does feel weird. The moment I read the thing saying, it was provisional, we didn't find evidence of match fixing, so we're going to let him off for time served, I was like, I need to know the details. So I read everything at the time, and when I saw that he bet against himself, I was like, I guess you can't prove that he didn't fix those games, or that he did, but come on, that's integrity 101. It's like, you can't bet on your games at all, but against yourself? Come on, man, that just can't be real. So I'm happy that he didn't get a longer sentence. I hate to see talent wasted. I always want people to get second chances. I like people to be able to fix themselves and work on themselves and improve themselves, but you got to get properly punished. This was not a proper punishment in that sense. It feels a bit soft. I completely agree with a lot of things they said, but when you put it in that sort of context, it just feels wrong. It doesn't feel like they've actually properly punished him, which kind of brings me on to my next point, because I now want to look to the future. It's something I put briefly in the notes, and you responded to it with a flat no. Is, can Joel come back from this? Because I'd like him to. I really enjoy watching him play. He's kind of OP. As long as he's not cheating, like certain members of the community have suggested, that'd be great to see again. I'd love to see him play again. So we have to have that discussion, assuming he wants to, right? Let's assume he's not just a gambling addict who happened to be good at CS. Let's hope he's a CS addict who also got addicted to gambling. Do you see, at any point in the next, let's say, half a decade, Joel being able to make a comeback? Because, let's be honest, he's 18, or barely just turned 19. He is a kid, for all intents and purposes. He can't drink in the States, and I sure as hell won't take him seriously. He's still a child. Is there a road back? And firstly, most importantly, considering what I've seen on Twitter, can there be a road back in Sweden?
First of all, I think he wants to come back. I think the aforementioned Australian guys. Do you know who they are? No. They made no fuss about being banned whatsoever. You have no idea. The Rooster guys did, because their bans were probably a bit too long, a year or two. It genuinely affected their progress. It definitely affected the Australian scene as a whole. The guys who were actually banned for 5 years, they haven't said a peep. They haven't fought to get back, because for them, they match fixed. They made a bunch of money, and now it's over. Oh, well, they caught me. I'll just move on to other things. I'll just, get away with it. It's Joel is genuinely Joel actually said something. Joel actually made a big ass response. I don't know if he wrote it. Some people said it was just ChatGPT. I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised. I think I've seen some of his tweets in English. It's a bit sketch sometimes. So whatever. If he needs to get his message across, let him be.
Yeah, but if Joel, why would Joel save face if he had no intention of coming back? He definitely wants to. So I think he definitely wants to. In Sweden, I don't think so. In the community, he's quite disliked. He is never setting foot in Godsent again. Like they caused him, like he caused them so much problems that like while they've worked with him, they've helped him, they've like helped with the investigation. A lot has been like under wraps. I don't think they want him back. I'm not sure like if that word of mouth matters for other teams. But I'm pretty sure it would. Like we have 4 big actors in Sweden, maybe 5. Um, And like one of them is Godsent. You have Alliance, Medisport. Right now you have Alliance, Medisport, Eyeballers, Lil Mix to a degree are trying to build something. Like you have some teams who like could invest. They could take someone like Joel. A lot of them are pissed off. Alliance, like fucking Robin being on Twitter is the entire reason things blew up in the first place.
Yeah, there was some, he put out some tweets. Let's put it that. I think some deleted, but he put out some tweets.
He put out some tweets, and that was kind of the start of the whole shitstorm. So I don't think like right now, probably not. Like maybe he could find his way on some like very small team, like a very small Swedish mix, go up through some qualifiers, and like in a few years' time, someone is going to be like, you know what? He hasn't done shit since he came back from his ban. Like in this hypothetical, he hasn't done shit since he came back from his ban. And you know, we need a good player, and he's good. I'll take him, and then just put him in. Like he could maybe. I hope he does. I hope that's the outcome that comes of this. But in Sweden, right now, no. I think he's better off sticking with like Bubble and whoever else wants to play with him at the moment.
That's the problem. You know, if you see, oftentimes he does attract not the greatest company in terms of the teams he ends up going to qualifiers with. Like, there's a lot of the time, the teams he plays with are players who are often maligned, accused of match fixing, and that's a bit rough, I think. In terms of building long-term community trust, playing with other players who constantly get accused of match fixing is not going to help. That's not going to help anyone.
Yeah. But I think that's where he's at right now. I think he probably has to play with these kind of people.
He's else was up ridiculously talented. That's the problem. If he's I'm going to just keep assuming he's not cheating, because I don't want him to be.
Let's do so, yeah.
He's just nuts. Like, you see him going to these qualifiers with teams like Victory Zigzag, drops ridiculous numbers, and you're just like, why did this guy have to go and throw it away? Like, why you? Like, why you? Like, you're so good. Stop this, please. I wish. But no, that's kind of the whole situation. They are. It's kind of rough. It's rough to think about, like, all the players who've taken long bans. The amount of match fixing that we've found has been rife. In the Joel situation, it's a mess. Hopefully we can move past it as a scene, and hopefully we can start like stomping this stuff out, because ESIC, the biggest issue is for me is their turnaround in terms of getting shit done. I know investigations are not easy to run and they're not well funded. I just wish there was a world where they could be better supported and have just a more effective system, because we need that sort of action. I've been lobbying for this like for a long time. The Valve Esports Commission, as I keep calling it in my head, or VEC, you know, to go alongside VAC, definitely needs to exist. Like something where not only can they create a better tournament circuit, a Valve-sponsored circuit, they can also put a whole bunch of that money they're going to raise through like us crowdsourcing stuff. Like if they want to crowdfund prize pools, but as someone quite interestingly suggested once, cap the prize pool at 2 million. Take everything beyond that. The next 2 million funds VEC, or their version of ESIC. Then the next, whatever the hell, goes to charity. That'd be crazy. Like, imagine how much money you could pump into something like ESIC using these sorts of methods. We need something from Valve, really, on this stuff. Because
we don't also need their legal team of a huge game developer. Like,
Yeah, that'd be nice, but we don't. It's not that we need them for legitimacy. Everyone at this point knows ESIC are doing the right thing. The big tournaments are all following them. It's just a question of resources. It's impossible to run this sort of operation without those resources. I'd love Valve to step in. But alright, let's wrap that up, and let's get back into the silly, fun, shooty, bang bang news of Rostermania.
This was around.
It was a very needed rant. It's one of the biggest topics to talk about. We have to bring it up. And you did a great job just outlining every little detail that mattered. But alright, Rostermania, Liquid drip-fed us their roster. It started with the Skulls and Zeus announcement, all the way through to Cadian and Twists. We got some sob story farewells. Oh, it was sad. Look who's back. Let's get another one of those Grand Slams. That'd be really cool. The roster's finally together. We've said so much about this team. I've done shows for like, it feels like I've been talking about this team for months, and now it's finally assembled. Like, it's just been the perennial, just like demon on my shoulder, just Liquid going, oh yeah, this team's coming. Like, I'm like, can you announce it? They're like, well, not yet. They're finally here. I'm kind of like, whatever. My life feels kind of empty now. I can't wait for the Liquid roster. They're out, and they can't play for like however long. Like, they're not at the next event.
Katowice, I'm pretty sure.
We're not going to see them till Katowice, so a big waiting time. Do you think they are a Grand Slam potential winner? Do you think they have that sort of level in them, or do you see this roster as more as just a re-entry into consistent elite play rather than being the best of the best?
That's such a hard question because like they are like, I don't think anyone can say that like on paper this team is great. You can't really argue with that. You have at least 4 players who are proven to be great, and then you have Skulls who should be great. Like, it's not like the team is gonna live and die on Skulls in terms of making it out of groups. If things work out, but you never know. I think moving away from the Yakindar IGL experiment is probably the biggest improvement that this team is doing.
100%.
Yeah. Moving to like getting Twists in here. I'm so surprised Twists actually would leave for Liquid. Like, there's actually good stuff happening here if Twists is willing to leave the clearly the best team in the world right now, in my opinion, which is FaZe. If he's willing to leave them, I mean, obviously he left before they had their big run. I think he said that he knew he was going to leave before, like at Sydney.
Yeah, we had those murmurings behind the scenes as well. Like the rumor mill has been turning for a long time. It's not a new one.
Yeah, no, I think he said in his farewell video that he was like, I knew after Sydney I was going to leave. I told the guys, but like I had no idea we were going to go on this huge run.
Yeah.
And they did go on a huge run. So like, if he's willing to leave that for a completely new project, I am spitting all over the place. Let's. I just realized.
Okay, it's just a
no, if he's willing. Yeah, if he's willing to leave. Yeah, there's not 8-dimensional podcasting. there's not squirters in front of the seat. I'm sorry. I'm pretty sure that's a thing. Like 8-dimensional cinema. Anyway.
Anyway.
If he's willing to leave this for a completely new project, there's obviously something happening. And I don't think it's just like, I want to go back to my friend Naf. Like, I'm pretty sure he has genuine belief in the project as a whole. Like, he's in his prime. Like, this is the prime of his career. If you could say so. It's like ongoing.
Yeah, he's interesting because I think he's played his very best like individual CS on the Liquid Grand Slam, which feels a bit weird. But he plays his best team CS and has been just consistent like crazy with FaZe. So coming back now, when I theorized Cadian's roster moves after his unfortunate removal from Heroic, I said Liquid should go back to an America's RMR team. And some people thought it was silly, like, no, they said goodbye to NA, but realistically, if you're having to build from zero, which region do you want to be building through? Like, which one do you want to be getting your like merit-based points from? Do you want to try and grind out that sort of like recognition through the European RMRs and qualifiers? Or do you want to go play with 60? Like, it's a very, very different world in NA. Like, I bring up 60 just because he dropped those ridiculous stats. Like, he's putting up 3.0 ratings in North America, and I'm like, cool, but like, we see you in the EU and you put up 1.02, and we think, oh, not bad. Like, there's a very different world out there, and I think Liquid have done the right decision. They made the right decision. They've gone out to the easier region, and in doing so, not just settled for a bunch of okay-ish players, they've pretty much just grabbed, in almost every case, the best available option. So I think they've done an amazing job settling the roster. We'll see them at the next major, and hopefully all goes well, because having Liquid be a top team in CS, I think it's good for the scene. It's just good. It's nice to have like a big brand who do things in a pretty reasonable way most of the time. I can't think of any time they've been a malicious actor in the scene or done anything bad. Like, they make good content, they make good signings, they pay their players. Like, they're just a good org. So I'm glad to see them succeeding and topping the scene. Potentially topping the scene. The other big move that we listed is FaZe Frozen, the obvious replacement, the move that kind of has been rumoured for a long time, and I think is kind of like the sequel to the ROPS just sliding into phase. It's going to be Frozen just slides into phase, and they just keep on whirring, keep on going, keep on chucking. I'm not sure they could be the best team in the world still. You know, the last event they did lose to Vitality. They didn't finish number one in that event. But I think we don't see them. They're not going to have a big drop off. It's not a big move to integrate him. He's comfortable with Karrigan. Karrigan's great at integrating players anyway. I think we have more elite play to watch, and that's going to be great because something we are probably lacking right now is a group of elite teams. We've had FaZe playing well, Vitality playing well, and everyone else. It's a bit all over the shop. ENCE had their moments, but it's not very convincing. So I'm glad to see that FaZe made a move that just keeps them where they are, and that's a lovely way to see it.
It is a lovely way to see it, and I think that's pretty much exactly what's going to happen. It's the final stage in like what was going to happen, because I remember when like there were murmurs that Karrigan was going to join FaZe, and then it was pretty much confirmed, like, I'm going to join FaZe, like it's going to happen. And then he did, and like immediately before he even joined, I saw people saying like, well, at some point he's going to bring ROPS over. Like, of course he was.
Yeah,
it's confirmed. Like, it was all but confirmed. And then, you know, Frozen, he just kept being nuts while he kept playing with ROPS for that final year in Mouse without Karrigan. And then ROPS joined, and it was like expected. And again, like as soon as ROPS joined, I remember people saying, "Can't wait until Frozen joins this team." Like it's gonna happen.
yeah, Karrigan bringing his boys over.
Yeah, unless you're bringing in Chris J next time, like it's over now. The Mouse roster is now like the good Mouse roster.
It's now Mouse
part
NXT.
Of the good
and yeah, it's now Mouse NXT. It's crazy how that's worked.
Yeah, no, but it's like this saga is over. Like we now have all three of them, or it's not over. It's let's say the first two acts are over, and here comes the third act where we have Karrigan, Frozen, and ROPS, a fucking amazing core that we saw 4 or 5 years ago at this point, which is now going to be on a team that is actually fucking amazing with like Rain and Brookie. So yeah. It's exciting. I'm excited to see them at the World Final. I did think this move was actually going to happen after World Final, but it seems like maybe a lot of teams had contracts running out before the World Final. I guess it's like they want to get the shuffle ready before the RMR cycle.
Makes sense to me. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but it's going to be cool. The World Final. Somehow we're going to have a lot of debuting roster in both the fall final and the world final, I feel like.
It's a bit odd, but it's cool. It's cool. It's always nice to see this before the major cycle, so they can actually be good by the major, right? Right? We can have a great major. It's going to be the best major. I'm going to Copenhagen. It's going to be an amazing major. It's not going to be Paris was fun, but like it's been a rough couple majors, all right.
Yeah,
it's been a rough time, and I'm hoping this one actually performs. That we see Katowice, everyone irons out their flaws, and big major, and that's gonna be a good time. I'm just praying on the return of like a big, successful event. The final roster move that we put on our list. This is just an interesting little story, and I'll let you tell it because it was funny to me to watch this develop.
It's just for laughs. There were 2 big developments around TSM in this past 2 weeks. The first one is that according to sources, they are going to sign Regin as a coach. Hooray, they'll probably fix all their issues. The second big news piece was from Into the Breach's owner when they extended the contracts of Ral and Crucial by another year. Which was that TSM, obviously having Cypher, were looking to get an invite to the RMR by signing 2 of the players who made the playoffs with Into the Breach in Paris. And he basically said that TSM tried to swoop in and poach them, and we are so proud of them that like they didn't go to this bigger team and actually stayed faithful to us and all of this stuff, and basically berated TSM for there was some really good quote that I'm now forgetting, but like it basically burned TSM about trying to poach their players.
Trying to poach their players and generally being unsuccessful. that was kind of it. He was talking about how the mediocre results they've had. He's not wrong. He's really not wrong. They have been so whatever in this tier 2 scene. It's not terrible, but they're just not good.
Yeah, from a management point of view, I just think that whole poaching attempt is so sad for like Valde and Lambert. Valda in particular, because imagine you're an IGL, you have this like non-ideal roster, but like some good pieces. Like, first of all, it's funny that Modo is like actually doing all right on this team, and he's the best, probably the best player on the team right now. And he was supposed to be replaced by Crucial, who is by no means bad, but like he is. And but like imagine you're Valde, you're slaving your fucking ass off like ahead of this major cycle. You're doing your absolute best with this roster that was pieced together by Xtas, and then he just dipped. Um, and then you hear,
Yeah.
probably not even from his manager, you hear in the news that your Opper, who is doing good, like he's actually performing above expectation, and some other guy who you are probably a bit unhappy with if you're the captain in this team, they're going to be cut for two players you've never worked with before, so we get an invite to the RMR. And you're like, you're sitting there, you're preparing. We're going to be so good. We're going to make it through all the open qualifiers, and we're going to upset everyone. There's going to be happy headlines, and, we're going to make it to the RMR. And then, you just read like a tweet saying, no, actually, they just wanted the invite. And then, let's just pump and dump Rallen and Crucial into this team. And, if we fail to make the RMR, we'll just disband. No problem. Like,
yeah, TS7.
I just thought, yeah,
they've been an absolute nightmare because they first, we start hearing about their return and how they're scouting talent in Europe, and I'm like, okay. They specifically mentioned like being like German linked, and I was like, okay, maybe they're gonna sign some of these Sangol players like QB, Soulfly, like they're gonna maybe go that route, or I don't know. I was curious to see what they do, and they end up just mishmashing rejects, random youngsters, Valde as IGL, and I was just like, what on earth is this concoction? Like, team building 101. You put three players together who can play together. Like, three players you've seen play together. That's like the base level stuff you do. You then start experimenting. You can't just pick up random 30-year-olds. Like, what are you... If you're going to put together random players, at least pick up young players. And then you don't care if they're not immediately good, because you can wait 12, 18, 24 months. It's not that urgent. But when you start signing players like Jax, you're not a long-term project anymore. It was just a ridiculous attempt in the first place. And the fact that they then resorted to trying to buy an RMR slot, I was just shaking my head. So glad to see it didn't work. I've heard that the team is not particularly well structured either, in terms of the way they're playing, like the way the roles are being just like set up. I think honestly, Cypher needs to come back to ITB if it was possible. If it was possible, he should come back to ITB. It'd be thriving, I think, in that sort of environment rather than this one. But
to me, it's pretty evident exactly how they built this team, because it's no secret TSM are like, they didn't have money. There was no money. Like,
they took what was available. The
Yeah,
scraps.
not even that, because if you look at this team, on name value alone, the fact that they got this with probably paying one buyout for Cypher, it's fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Like, the name value on this team, you have like pretty much everybody here has like good LAN experience except for Modo, who has turned out to be great. So like, good job. Jax, Valde, Inters, and Cypher. Imagine you get that for a sum that is like whatever the size of one ITB buyout is, like after Paris. Fucking amazing on paper, but then of course, it like as a team, it's horrible. You got Xtas as well, probably for free. Like, that's huge.
It's
Probably
amazing
the best
on paper in the Financial Times. In a paper about esports and winning games, it's a terrible, terrible decision. Like, you
terrible team.
You might win an MBA, like you'll get an MBA off this. This is a great like master's work for something in finance. Like, shit, great, good job. This is a real good deal, but like, you're not going to win anything, so it's terrible. I'm sorry.
I mean,
that's what matters.
Exactly how they built this team. They looked at the teams, the names that are available, and they were like, oh well, this is great, this is great, this is great. We can get this for free. Awesome. We just have a great team now. We did good, guys. High five. we built the best possible team for free. Awesome. Nice.
All that scouting for nothing.
Yeah, supposed scouting, man. They had... I remember there was a funny thing that kept going around before they actually built the team, was that they had a position up on LinkedIn for like their Counter-Strike general management. and they just kept making interviews where they're like, we keep being committed to entering CS, we're just waiting for the right time to do it, and then blah blah blah, all of this stuff. And I think that LinkedIn like job advert was up for like 8 months with not
God
being
damn.
removed, so they didn't employ anyone. Like they were looking for a general manager for 8 months, and then they removed the position. I don't know if they actually signed anyone. And then they got Xtas, and then they put together these names. I don't know if that was Xtas's doing, in which case he's the idiot who just signed based on name value and money. Or if it was some other guy who just plunked these people together and said, Xtas, you can work with this, right? Right? Like,
And as soon as he could, he ran the fuck away.
yeah.
Good. Good, honestly, good.
Yeah, fuck this team.
Let's just put it that way. Next topic, another one of your favourites. We're talking about Sweden.
Yes.
And we're going, this is fairly deep in the scene, but it's a big deal to Swedes. And that's the Svenska Cupen 2023.
Svenska Cupen.
Yeah.
The Swedish Cup. It's like the FA Cup. But
of Swedish Counter-Strike, which is probably far more interesting to watch, honestly, at this point. It
was a very good event.
Yeah, I was about to say.
It was a very, very, very good event.
It actually caught my eye, and I was pleasantly surprised by, firstly, the level of play from all the teams that attended. So I was expecting way worse from, well, I got what I expected from the Prodigies. But Alliance, I thought, played a decent game. I thought Godsent outplaying Metasport was not on my bucket, like not on my my bingo sheet. You know, I thought Metasport would beat them. Godsent played very well. And all in all, a pretty positive event. So you have many takeaways. So I'll let you rant on this. But yeah, for me personally, it was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, it was a pleasant surprise. I have like 3 main takeaways. This was the big event in Sweden. This was like making it to Svenska Cupen and doing well at Svenska Cupen was like the big goal for like the 3 or 4 big Swedish teams. Eyeballers, Godsent, Alliance, and Metasport, who are like the 4 big actors who are building something or trying to build something that genuinely has potential to like break into the top 30 at some point. And there's like good development. And I think it was an interesting event. It was a very interesting event. I think the 2 main takeaways for me are that Eyeballers and Godsent are just kind of a level above pretty much everyone else right now. Godsent kind of came out of nowhere. I think a lot of people who stopped watching Godsent when Joel left haven't maybe really noticed, but like they have been on a fucking tear like in the fall seasons in CS2, even while making roster changes. They dropped ZTR and had to drop Hype because he benched himself for health reasons. And they've still been kicking with Era and Rolf. So, you know, Godsend and Eyeballers, what I think they have above anyone else in the scene right now is they look like very, very, very well-rounded teams that have a lot of structure, and they actually have some talent to back that up, and they are like genuinely building something that is impressive to me, at least. And even looking in other events, Eyeballers, most recently, they came top 6 in ECL, which is pretty great, in my opinion. They only lost to Spirit and 3D Max in the groups, or what would have been 3D Max later on. Beating Saw, they beat whatever became Para and Pompa, maybe not the greatest opposition, but then they beat Aurora, they beat Betera, they beat Forza in the like stage 2 group, and in the playoffs they got a forfeit win over Monty, but they beat 9, and if they hadn't caught the flu from Svenska Cupen, they probably could have won against Apex as well. It was a pretty close game in the first map. So they've been doing well in general, and especially in Svenska Cupen. They were the champions. They won about $25,000 for their efforts. They beat Godsend in the final, who had a huge upset win against NIP. Godsend also being very good. Godsend definitely were in command. Like Godsend looked set to win Mirage. Like they had 12 in the bag. It was a 1v4 situation for Shine, and he had a ninja defuse at like 10-11. Yeah, he had a huge ninja defuse to make it 11-11, and then they won the map. Eyeballs won the second map 13-11. But like, if Godsend on an eco gets 12-10, we would have gone to the third map. It's a shame we didn't, but man, that moment from Shine was huge. I wish I was in the arena at the time. But yeah, those 2 teams. I think a lot of people talk about Metasport. I love Metasport. They have great players, especially now that they also signed ZTR and SUSP recently, just the other day.
Upgrades in my eyes.
Yeah, it's probably, especially over HNS. I think Rusty got maybe a bit fucked over. But I rate Rusty, but we'll see what happens. ZDR and Suspi are by no means bad players. But you mentioned Medisport. You said you did not expect Godsend to beat Medisport, which
No, for
kind of
me,
shows, where.
yeah,
Yeah.
Metasport for me are just like, they're just talented. They play well. Every game I watch of theirs is either competitive or a win. Like, I just like watching Metasport play when I can watch them, or if there's nothing bigger on, obviously. But yeah, they got beaten by Godsend, not too one-sided, but fairly, and Plopsky bombing on them. I was like, all right. And I know
He's been doing that
Plopsky's
the whole
been
season.
doing it a fair bit, but I was like, it's not just. I didn't think it'd be enough to beat a Metasport team I thought were better rounded, but for me, it's an
No.
upset. For you, clearly, just Godsend are a good team. Like, they should be taken more seriously in general.
I think it would have been a close match. Medisport, I should not shit on Medisport. I love Medisport. They are very talented. They probably have the most like talent going forward, but like out of all of these teams, they probably have the most like prodigy power, if that's a word you can use.
I'll allow
But
it.
what I think they lack relative to Godsend and Eyeballers right now is that they don't really look very well rounded. Like Jaquinho is a first time IGL. I shouldn't put the blame on him. I don't know if it's his issue, but like they I'm not sure if CTR is taking over the calls, but like they seem a bit messy for me. Like they're relying a lot on their proper talent to win games, while Godsend and Eyeballers actually have like something more solid ground to stand on. Eyeballers just through like sheer experience at this point, having played for a long time, and Godsend have a great like setup in. You have Golden and you have Plopsky, and like Golden especially. Golden might be the best part about this Godsend team right now because Golden has been crazy. Not as a player, but like just looking at like the macro game of what Godsend are doing, a lot of that I think is definitely Golden. Um, but yeah, they went on to beat NIP 2-1. And this is an event where you needed a Swedish majority, so a lot of people might be wondering what the fuck are NIP doing here with one Swedish player. They played with three.
Yeah.
They played with Esatag, Config, and Res, Maxter, once again standing in, still under contract, and Silence, who some people probably went, who the fuck is Silence?
Me,
He is a
I
Swedish
said, who the
hopper.
fuck is Silence?
Yeah, well, I can tell you he's a Swedish hopper. He's pretty great. He's been playing with the Prodigies, but and I think also with Kappa Bar maybe. But he's currently linked with Young Ninjas. He's expected to move to Young Ninjas pretty soon. But he stood in for this event, and he was pretty good, pretty all right. But I am just pissed off that NIP are here in the first place. And fucking everyone in Sweden was pissed off NIP were in the first place. I feel like it was. Nobody wanted them here. They got invited, and then people were like, well, they aren't Swedish anymore, so are they going to field some temporary roster, or are they just going to concede their invite and we can invite, because they got a semi-final invite as well. Like, oh, we could have invited Godsend straight into the semi-final, or Alliance, whoever the fuck would have been higher ranked at the time. And gotten another team in here, like Kappa Bar, who finished second in the actual, like, Swedish league, just yesterday. Like Kappa Bar are a decent team. You could have had Lil Mix in here, like at least attending, trying to do something. So it's a real shame that NIP felt the need to be there and take the third place. Like I'm happy for Silence and Maxter to get the platform to do so, but they could have been on another team. They could have been anywhere else. Like NIP shouldn't be here. And at the moment, they used to be the people's team. Like in Sweden, they used to be the people's team. Between NIP and Fnatic, NIP were the people's team. They were the people you supported because they were like a nice team. Not necessarily good. Fnatic were better, but NIP were like nice. They had some sort of spirit that you could follow. They just aren't anymore. Like they are this big evil corporation at this point who just took this invite because they could.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I feel like it ruins it for a lot of people.
Yeah, I get that vibe. I think for a lot of people, even when they were the sort of great lineup, the lineup with all the likable players, it was always a very much front of house thing. Like everyone liked the players, but with all the journalists releasing all those stories, everything we found out about what was going on behind the scenes, yeah, the distrust in the org has been long founded and deep running. So now that they don't have a good team and they don't have likable personalities attached to the front, it's just everyone just shitting on it because we don't like the back end. We don't know like what's been going on throughout all the years. It's quite hard to just like them and root for them. So I totally get the feeling. I get the vibe. Like, I understand why
Mm.
people say this sort of stuff. But yeah, great to see good Swedish Counter Strike. Man, is it weird to look at the the top like CS teams and just be like, Sweden doesn't really exist, France doesn't really exist, Poland doesn't really exist. Like, there's just international rosters and Danes and Russians, and like that's it. And you're like, this isn't
Barely
the
even
CS.
Danes at this point.
Yeah, barely even
There's
Danes.
barely even Danes or Russians at this point. There's
Yeah, with
because
the
Navi aren't Russian.
with the
Yeah.
destruction of heroic. Yeah, they're no longer a top team right now. Like, they're still fielding a Danish team, and I still want them to succeed, but they're just not there. So it's a wild west right now of just mixed
They are going
teams
to
and
play
Russians.
a $1 million LAN with Salazar as their operator, which feels weird to say.
And I picked them as an underdog, so we'll see how that goes. I made some decisions. I may not always stand by them. I may regret them in the future, but that's fine. Let's move on to something positive. We're an hour and 5 minutes in. We're only just getting to prospects.
I was about to say, let's be a bit speedy. Yep.
Yeah, prospects of the weeks, because it's been 2 weeks. I applied it for all the 2 weeks. I want to talk about one player. His stats kind of fell off a little bit during the second week. And I want to talk about another player who didn't really face much competition. But then when I realised he faced the first one, I was like, oh, screw it, I'm just going to talk about it. So I was going to talk about Slend. Now, Slend played on Mouse and XT. He's an AWPer. He now plays on Endpoint, because Endpoint just love good recruits. They're really good at recruiting. I'll be honest, they're currently not playing the best. They're not ultra performant in their roster, but I generally have faith in Mighty Max and the system he has, and the pieces he's signed in general have been good, so I'm sure they'll make more progress and get better. But Slend, yeah, he had a really good first week, the week we missed. He was looking really solid, hitting all his shots, making good plays. And his second week, the numbers fell down a bit. But I generally want to mention him, just big ups. I like Slend, I like this roster. They're going places. Now, the second player who caught my eye was absolutely dumpstering people. This guy's name is Nota. He's a 16-year-old Russian kid, because of course he is. He's playing with KingT as his IGL. Now, KingT, I always remember him as the Hard Legion guy. He played alongside a bunch of names you'd have heard of that haven't really made it much of an impact recently, but guys like Krad, Forrester, Sviat, I believe, is the other one that I kind of always thought about. And now he's playing on this roster. Now, it's Nota, 3 guys you'll have never heard of, I almost guarantee it. Unless you're a bigger nerd than us, you'll have never heard of the other guys, and KingT. And Nota just carries this roster. He absolutely carries this roster. They've played not too many big opponents. Like, they were going through some kind of qualifier. Oh no, it was advanced. That's why a lot of the names are a bit odd. ESEA advanced, but they did play the Witchers, which has some good names. They played Endpoint and beat them. They've generally been very high, level in terms of their level of play. Just the opponents aren't that great. And Nota has been the one notable part of it. He put up ridiculous numbers against all his opponents. When you watch him play, he's really, really explosive, really impactful, and one to watch out for, because he's 16. He's got a long time to develop, a long time to grow, and we might have potentially just already found the next donk. It's such a fruitful region in terms of young players. There's another one coming through. So yeah, those are the 2 guys I kind of focused on, and the 2 guys I think I'll be keeping an eye on. So, Quacke, yourself, you've managed to have, quite the selection of Swedish talent to pick through. So who have you gone with?
I picked 3 players. I picked Sapek, Pepsor, and Shine, the 3 younger guys from Eyeballers. Heap gets an honorable mention, but I'm not as impressed by Heap so far. And the Wonder Child, of course, but I'm not going to mention him here. JW somehow being the top player of Eyeballers recently, like the past 3 months or something. Great in CS2. Anyway, I'm talking about Sapek, Pepsor, and Shine because I think that this is a sort of young core that a lot of people underrate if you aren't really watching them. Sapek is someone you'd remember from Young Ninjas. He was alright. He didn't get the big numbers, but he was good. I remember they signed him on a pretty long-term contract that was then in quite short order bought out by Eyeballers when they started their team. Which was a no-brainer pickup. I really rate him. Pepsor, a lot of people I think would remember. I've talked to some people, and when we talked about this team, I remember they said, well, they listed to the players, and they were like, "Oh, JW is washed," and well, who the fuck is Shine? He looks dog shit. And Pepsor is a known quantity. He was mid, and I'm like, hold your horses. Pepsor is 21. The last time you lot saw him would probably have been Elisa, where he stood in for Fnatic that one time. And yeah, he
A
was
while
pretty
back.
mid. He was yeah, but he was pretty mid. Like, there's no denying that he was
Mhm.
kind of mid. About a year ago would have been. He is just a really great player. I feel like the main problem for eyeballers in general right now is consistency. I feel like pretty much anyone can show up. JW is probably the most consistently showing up player, which says a lot. But pretty much every map you have either Sapek, Peps, or Heap putting in like a great effort in their positions. But then the next map, they trade places, and like it ends up everybody having this like 1.05 average, which is a shame. But Pepsor is a lurker mostly on T side, and he's very much the win condition in a lot of eyeballers games where they're doing well. Like a lot of the time, eyeballers have this reputation for playing a lot of overtime games. If you're an eyeballers fan, you have a lot of heart attacks, even against pretty big opponents. Like, even against opponents like Apex, they will take a map to overtime. No problem. Maybe even 2 overtimes. And a lot of the time, I feel like Pepsor is the guy who is making that happen. Just through some sort of X factor. And Sapik as well. Sapik as well, I feel like he's just a stable player. A lot of the time when I like join a stream in the middle of the game, I'm like barely even surprised to see Sapik has twice the number of frags of like anyone else on his team. And I'm like, yeah, that's Sapik. And then other maps, he's just kind of nowhere.
Yeah,
But
they do have a bit of a consistency issue in that sense. That's the one thing I always complain about. I always complain about that when I see
yes,
eyeballers. It's like I don't know who's going to be the guy to win me a game, and if I'm having to
mm,
draw like names out of a hat, I don't think I'm going to make that many deep runs. But it is cool to see them have a run here and win an event. And I definitely see
yep,
what you mean about these players being ones to watch for the future. Because man, if we feel like we've seen a lot of them, we feel like we've heard their names a lot. That's just because they've been in academy systems for so long and pretty like
yes,
famous academy systems. They haven't actually had that much chance to develop at the highest level. They haven't spent that much time in high level teams or playing in big events. So great to see them land here, great to see them perform. The one guy that you
yep,
haven't touched on, but that I really don't know much about is the third guy in that group, Shine. Like, how do you
fine.
how do you characterize him relative to the others? Because I see Sapek as more like explosive entry, Pepsor doing some lurk work. What is
Yep.
Shine's role on this team?
He's very much taking the worst positions on the team. He's the bitch player we would talk about. But
Okay.
I know that eyeballers have been changing leadership a lot of times, so I'm not even sure a lot of people know who is currently calling for eyeballers. And if you look at eyeballers' history, they were founded by JW or revived by JW and Flusha.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the players have pretty much always been youngsters. You had Svedjehed there for a while. Shine is a founding member with Sapek and JW, and it was them and Svedjehed and Flusha would have been the fifth. Um, but like between JW, Flusha, or some young guy, pick any one of them, who would probably be the best IGL for this kind of team? Everyone would probably point to Flusha in the first hand and JW, who did it for a while and was pretty decent. Um, Probably would have picked those, but the IGL who has had the most success with this eyeballers team is Shine. And I think him as like he's 20 years old. He doesn't do anything crazy in the server. He's on here because I think he's done a lot to build this team. Like they're looking like a solid team. They're stable. They don't, falter under pressure. A lot of this is probably JW is doing as well, of course. But especially Shine, like they play a good tactical game, and I think a lot of that can be attributed to what Shine has done with this team.
Okay.
So in the same way you might look at CTR as like an IGL prodigy, I think Shine is someone who maybe won't make it into a tier 1 team unless he gets there on his own, whether that be through eyeballers or something else. But he's definitely someone I think does a lot for this team. And in terms of future IGLs, we don't have a lot of them. And I think Shine is definitely one that someone might want to keep an eye on for the future.
Yeah, it's nice to add that to the list, really, because players who have the potential to call, they're few and far between. So a player who's willing to sacrifice his roles, do a lot of things that no one else wants to do, but also call effectively is a great value addition. It's why actually a lot of people, like myself included, were really excited about ZTR. Like the fact that he was able to play the right way. He wasn't an explosive fragger during his time on the NIP main team when he stood in. He wasn't the most impactful rifler in terms of his fragging, but he just did the right things, and that was great to see. So yeah, Shine, worthy of a call out in that sense then. If he is going to be another one of those guys, every scene desperately needs them. It's like Cold Zero was complaining in his Reflections interview. Everyone wants to be the Cold Zero. Everyone wants to be the Fur. No one wants to be the Taco. And so it's nice to see there's some tacos in Sweden.
Yes.
Swedish tacos. Who'd have thought? Who'd have thought? But all right, on to the most recent events. Because we got two like live ongoing events we kind of want to talk about, and then we're going to finish on a bit of a laugh. So BetBoom Dacha Spirit versus Virtus Pro is now ongoing. It's the grand final. We're on map number 4. It's 2-1 in favor of Virtus Pro, and map 4 looks like it's going to Spirit at this rate. It's 10-4 to them. So it's going to be a 5-mapper, going to be a banger of a grand final. I was able to watch some of the first maps. It was some pretty decent CS. Go on, wagging your finger.
This might be the. I almost expected this would happen when we moved to MR12. This might be the first time in Tier 1, if you can call this event Tier 1. The first time in Tier 1 CS history, CSGO, post CSGO history, where we get a best of 5 0-2 reverse sweep.
Oh, okay, yeah.
LAN. It never happens. This is, for me, it's such a huge achievement, and Spirit might be the first ones to do it now that I'm watching like these scores. It's never happened in Tier 1 LAN ever. Like it happens in Tier 2 in like local Hong Kong LAN. There's an 0-2 reverse sweep in a best of 5
with some dodgy betting patterns.
Yeah. Entropic got close once against Gambit in V4. They didn't manage it. Heroic got close once. No, sorry, Heroic beat off Tai Lu doing it once. Also,
why did a random thumbs up just pop up on your screen? On your camera? What the hell was that? It's just a random emoji just popped up.
That's very strange, but we didn't talk about that. Yeah, no, I always bring it up because I think best of 5s in CSGO were so boring because every time you went to 0-2, I just knew in the back of my head, this will not happen. No one is going to reverse sweep this. Map is over. Stream is down. Even if they win a map, nothing is going to happen. Even if they win 2 maps, nothing is going to happen. Now it might actually happen because of the shorter map lengths, I would imagine, is probably a factor in this.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll keep an eye on it, I guess.
Yeah,
it's happening right now.
My weird obsession about this one record, like this is
one very
it's about to happen.
Thing,
it's about to happen. It's huge.
But yeah, this event has overall just been like a bit of a showcase of the Russian teams. Cloud9 going out to BetBoom was huge. Gave Nathany a lot of, I'm sure, pride and like this big, happy, warm glow in him because he finally got to take down his former team and have a little bit of a rant afterwards. We saw MIBR upset run kind of topping their group. No one really saw that coming. For them to then immediately fall in the playoffs was, well, unfortunate. But a kind of a sign that maybe, they're not actually the best team at this event. They just got a good game against Cloud9 who don't have an AWP. So nice to see that. Yeah, the playoffs was 3 completely Russian rosters and MIBR. So you know what I mean. When I say you look at the top 20 and it's just going to be mixed teams, Russians, and maybe even one Danish team one day if Astralis stop playing like this. So they got absolutely battered. Yeah, it's Russian forward. Like this generation of Russian, like it's not even all AWPers, it's riflers just coming down the mountain at us. It's terrifying, and this event is pure propaganda for them. Like, holy crap. I'm scared. I'm so scared of these Russian rifles. Yeah. We used to be like talking about CS AWPers, all that stuff. It didn't end up like taking over the world in quite the way we thought it would. Now it's time for just Russian rifle power, apparently. So hopefully this grand final keeps on being good. Hopefully Astralis, no one wants to root for them because of, Stabben and Stabby being on their team, as they've been so delicately named by Twitch chat. I'm always rooting for better CS, so I hope those good players figure it out. and play something a little less dog water next time. Game Legion finishing bottom of the group as expected. I don't think they're very good. Finally, it's starting to look like they're actually playing not very good, because they kept playing like a good team, which frustrated me for months on end. And then, of course, let's wrap it up and talk about ESL Impact and the Nordic Women's Championship, which is something you threw in that I didn't really get to follow much, but you did a little bit.
It is my pick.
It is very much your pick. The second semi-final, the Impact League, just finished. So we have our grand final set. Everyone, it's such a surprise. It's Na'Vi Javelins versus Nigma Galaxy. Oh my god. Who'd have thought? Even with the tiny little scare, Nigma Galaxy have done this the last couple events, I think, where they've given us a little scare in the openings. Like, dropped a best of one. Dropped a map in the best of three they needed to get out of the group. And then get out of the group and just stop. Like, sure, they did win the second map in overtime against 9 Panda. But they're basically a playoff team. They do this every time. They get to the playoffs and then all of a sudden turn it on and just win. And Na'Vi Javelin seem to be doing the same thing. They also needed to go to the best of three, drop a map, just make it through. And then they absolutely battered Fluxo Demons. So the same old suspects at the top of the scene. The same old players absolutely wrecking shit. My fantasy team for this event is loving it. Absolutely loving it. I picked perfectly. I got 2 Nigma Galaxy players, 2 Na'Vi Javelin players, and 1 Fluxo Demon. So all my players made playoffs. 4 of my 5 players are in the grand final. It's a good day for me. And yeah, the women's scene unfortunately doesn't get attention outside of silly drama nonsense that I don't really give a toss about. I want to talk about the teams, because the way they play is always fascinating to me. It's a completely different meta a lot of the time to the tier 1 men's scene, tier 1 open scene. And you see really interesting team plays, aggressions where you're not expecting them, random players doing some, honestly, sometimes wild stuff. I think Nigma Galaxy, what makes them so interesting is you can have just this clear idea in your mind of how a round's going to go, and then it gets to the post plant where they're in 2v4 and just miracles happen. Absolute miracles happen. They have players who are so clutch in the late round, they have players who are so well coordinated in the early round. That's why they end up stomping people. The rounds where the early round stuff works, they just crush you. You'll have Vilga 23 and Tori just running down your throat, battering you, and you're like, how do I survive this? Oh, we finally killed them all. And then Kat and Anna just pull out a 2v5. So this team is so much fun to watch. No one ever talks about it. No one ever watches it. I tried briefly, but yeah, I'm not going to get into why I stopped making videos about the women's scene. But let's just say the viewer retention was non-existent. Non-existent. So it didn't really make sense to commit so much time to it. But I'm still going to watch the games. I'll still find them fun to watch. So this is going to be a big grand final. Hopefully it will start after the Virtus Pro Spirit Map 5 is done, because I want to watch that as well. But yeah, one thing we said when we started this show, we like talking about all Counter-Strike. We watch pretty much any level of Counter-Strike as long as the storylines are interesting or there's players we like. We're keeping it consistent. I'm watching Impact Finals this weekend, and it's hopefully going to be a banger, because these two teams, they face each other all the time in grand finals. It's become one of the most long-standing rivalries in CS. It just never gets talked about. These are the storylines, by the way, ESL, you should be making promos about. You never do. This is the sort of stuff that we should be seeing on social media, not just analysts throwing hissy fits. This is the stuff that should be actually important. Man, I'm really excited about this event. Have you been able to follow any of it?
A bit. I did watch a bit of the previous semifinal, the first semifinal. But also I've just been keeping up on HLTV, and I think it was interesting, not just talking about Nigma Galaxy, but also talking about HSG. HSG, sort of almost being the laughing stock as the one Asian team who show up in every final, because there's an open qualifier where they beat one Australian team to get there.
Yeah, it always looks really weird on paper, but there's stuff you just don't see. There's other teams you try. It's just we never see it, so it looks always a bit silly just to see them win one event, one match, and there you go, you're qualified.
Yeah, that's true. But then they also never do anything. So it's nice to see that they're actually. I mean, Nigma Galaxy suffered their first loss on LAN, and they almost would have ever their first LAN loss ever. That's how dominant Nigma Galaxy have been. And also they had this big scare against HSG in the final game. It was like the second map went the way of HSG after, what is that, 3 overtimes? Yeah, 3 overtimes.
Yeah, it was one game.
Yeah, the first map had an overtime as well. So like they genuinely did good stuff. HSG for once. Otherwise they normally just show up and then they barely get double digits. But they actually built something pretty cool. And
Yeah.
I think FlyQuest are also a talking point, not just and Fluxo, of course, topping the group is also a talking point that can definitely be made.
Yeah.
FlyQuest doing nothing. I like FlyQuest a lot. I like Bibian especially. Bibian is a great player.
That's so disappointing. I mean, this was the point that got the whole Blair situation with Hedger started. But FlyQuest, man, they should be good. They should be better than this. I will be honest. Bibian is a talent in the women's scene. She's a real talent. She's got so much skill, and we've not got to see any of it like come to light. I don't follow the women's like NA side in terms of the qualifiers for all this stuff. I just know they run rampant. The FlyQuest Red side. And the second place team, I get it, Shimmer looked outclassed on paper when I see them match up with FlyQuest Red. So I wasn't expecting them to perform particularly well. But yeah, this stomp from HSGFE, I know HSG have gotten a lot better. Like, Xiaowu is just developing and getting better. They signed Olga, which a long time ago, it seemed like silly. They had issues with communication, things weren't working, and they've now looked a lot stronger, like they figured at least some of that out. But man, to get dumpstered like that was painful. I really wanted to see more from FlyQuest. I thought that group was going to be a group of death, really. If you look at it on paper, Fluxo Demons should have been the team getting stomped. If anything, if anyone. They didn't. They topped it. 2 B1s, but still, they topped it. And then Nigma, HSG, FlyQuest, these are like the 3 teams I want to see when I come and watch these events. So the fact that they end up like this, that don't really put much of a fight, very disappointing. I was hoping for more. I was hoping for so much more. So yeah.
Yep.
There's definitely stuff to talk about. There's stuff to talk about, stuff to promote, stuff to build content around. But anyway, just keep throwing money at it.
Yep.
That's fine.
Just keep throwing money at it. At some point, it's gonna happen. Keep removing non-European slots. Like, I have no fucking idea why there's only 8 slots in the finals for 3 regions.
The finals are too small. They've outgrown. Not outgrown. Yeah. It's not like they're too big to be held at DreamHacks. It's more that you need to be formatting this event like it isn't a DreamHack Open. This should be a big LAN final. You should have a longer LAN off-stage period. You need to have a bigger like playoff pool. I was thinking, even just looking at these groups, just with these 8 teams, you could have had a 16 playoff that would have been entertaining. So there's more to be done with the Impact League. I don't think it's been very well. I've been saying it since day one. It's not been well promoted. I don't think it's been particularly well run, and I just don't like the way they're moving forward with it. So a lot of complaints, but man, it's going to be a good grand final. Nordics.
About Europe, I just think it's such a waste that you have. I'll get to it in a second. About the Nordics, about Impact, I just think it's such a shame that you have probably peak investment right now into women's teams who are apparently perfectly happy not making the finals. Like, when does that patience run out? When do you stop having orgs like, Spirit or Guild or G2?
G2, quite importantly, yeah.
Yeah, NIP, G2, ENS, like Virtus Pro, these are like big orgs who are probably expecting something. When are they going to be happy just never making finals?
Yeah.
And, we shouldn't just quota them into the finals, but like they're doing okay. G2 especially, I feel like G2 could have definitely made the finals. They played a very good game. Zas is still crazy, and I'll get to that in the fucking Nordic Championship as well.
Yeah.
They could have, like, I feel like this is a team that deserves to play on LAN. Like on merit, but the finals are just too small, and I get they're increasing the European spots now, but they're also decreasing every other spot. Like, why not just extend it to 12 teams? Like, why?
Yeah, like a 10-team playoff, a 12-team playoffs. All of these things I think are better options than limiting the teams who arrive, especially if you're still going to be pumping money into this whilst only 2,000 people watch every game. Like, if you're still willing to take that loss, do it properly. Show us your commitment to the bid.
Yeah.
And make it a good product for the 2,000 of us who still watch every grand final.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just strange to me. Anyway, I was going to move on to the Nordic Championship. This was an event. This is something none of you would have seen. It's not on HLTV.
No.
And if Stamina was watching, they didn't apply. But there's um no, it was basically I love national teams playing in CS. We don't see it too much, but I absolutely love it. I think it's so fun to just put together like a national team in the same way you would conventional sports, and applying this to esports. And there was a Nordic championship between the 5 Nordic national teams for about $5,000 in total in the prize pool, hosted on LAN in Gothenburg by the Swedish Esports Federation. And yeah, it was a fun event to follow. I was following it for Dust 2, so I was watching the games to keep an eye on, writing up a bit of a report.
They didn't send you out there? They didn't give you the train ticket up to Göteborg?
I did. I kind of wanted to, but in the end, I was sick either way, so wouldn't have mattered. Yeah. It also, but like that's sort of part of my point is that I probably couldn't have made it to Gothenburg in time because it was very poorly advertised. It was very poorly advertised, and I feel like a lot of it was there wasn't a lot of hype around it at all. Like it's still a $5,000 event for national teams. Like in Sweden earlier this year, the esports federation were added to like the big overarching sports federation, which was a huge deal because like if you want to say legally, but officially, esports in Sweden is now equivalent to football, like as a sport. They are in an official sense, they are both to be considered like proper sports with athletes and like everything that entails. And this was the first time we had a Nordic championship after that was the case. It was the first time the Swedish national team played after that was the case. And it could have been a big deal, but it didn't end up being very much. I remember I was doing an interview with the coach KMS, who was great. He was great about all of this. But there was like, I was kind of waiting, like, when is our actual like team is going to be announced? Like, there's less than 2 weeks until the event, and we just waited, and eventually it came up the day of the event, pretty much. And like the event itself didn't really have a proper press release in any sense. Like there was a post on their website, but I don't think they mentioned it on Twitter until the event was actually played. The few people who were in attendance, I'm not sure how they found out. I'm assuming it was mostly representatives from like the teams themselves who showed up. It's just a shame for fans that like it was hard to find the stream. The stream only covered about half the games. And I just feel like it's such a shame that we have like this pretty decent sized event being held at like a pretty big museum in Gothenburg. Like it was an amazing initiative, but then it just kind of falls short because not a lot of people even found out about it. And that was just a big shame, in my opinion.
I mean, that sort of event is a great little excuse to take a weekend trip to Gothenburg. I'm going to be honest. Everything I've heard about that city is that it's gorgeous. And you're telling me I can go to this like fancy museum, watch a bit of CS, then get pissed in Gothenburg. That'd be a great little weekend trip, honestly. Like, that's the sort of thing you would want to promote. I mean, sure, it's not the time of year to be visiting Sweden. In all fairness, it's miserably dark and cold. I'm sure you guys are loving it. But aside from that, yeah, it's a pretty cool little event. So I agree with you. There should be, especially if you're going to treat it as an officially federated national team event, especially for the Swedes specifically. Yeah. Like, I'd expect a little more pomp, a little more fanfare for that sort of thing. Then you would talk to me about this, like finding out the rosters of pretty much every nation the day of was so weird. Like, these are a national team. Like, officially.
I found out the event was happening because the Finnish Federation posted their roster like a little bit more than a week in advance. And I was like, what the fuck is this event? But it says Nordic, like Sweden must be here. Right? And then it turns out we're organizing the whole thing. Like, it's... And then I went looking, and then I talked to people, and they were like, "Oh, yes, this event is happening. I had no idea. I've been looking all over for it. I searched it. The only thing that came up was the Finnish announcement of the roster, and like all of these things just kept happening, and it was a bit of a shame. I feel like this is, and it was also scheduled the same weekend as Svenska Cupen happening on the other side of the nation. So even if you are a fan of like Swedish female CS, you probably are also a fan of like the biggest LAN event in Sweden. So maybe you would have gone to the other city.
Not great timing. Not great timing at all.
Timing, no.
Maybe have you heard of June, July, August? These months, it's a lot nicer to be in Sweden in these months. And
yeah,
you could probably put on a nice little
Yeah, I'm probably not telling the full story. Like, in fairness, there's probably a whole bunch of stuff that's happening behind the scenes that I just don't know and probably don't even understand.
We
Like,
barely
I
heard
am not
about
an
the
event
front of the scene.
organizer.
How do we have even heard about the behind the scenes stuff? Like, what?
I'm not an event organizer, but as someone who watches CS, and especially in this case, wanted to talk about the event, but like wanted to cover the event since I was like covering the event from home, like making articles about it. I felt like I wanted to, I felt like it was a bit frustrating that like it was so difficult. It was such an effort for me to even find out about it. Like,
Yeah.
I was refreshing the Twitter page, there was nothing, and like eventually, I just
Yeah, it's
a
unfortunate.
little bit frustrating.
Yeah, and let's finish off by let's wrap up with a laugh. So the CCT Online Finals 5 happened, and now overall big one. It's a whole big online best of 3 hoopla. Honestly, it's a drag trying to watch every single one of these games. It took so bloody long. But most importantly, G2 played. They beat Fluxo, which I thought was, Fluxo's here. They then beat Sprout, which is okay, whatever. Still online play, still dropping maps to these teams. Not a great debut with Nexa. And then it happened. They played Aurora, and it'd be fine if they just lost an online BO3 to Aurora. They got completely and utterly annihilated. They then go down to the lower bracket, lose to Guild Eagles, and go home. So that was my big laugh of the week. Like, you can't really.
Yeah, they got donked, man.
They didn't even get donked. They didn't get to play donk. They got just destroyed. Yeah. They just got wrecked. They end up finishing 5th to 6, made $5,000. But all in all, you can't really ask for a worse start to the Nexa lineup. And not only is Nexa's numbers not impressive, and he's never going to be the biggest numbers guy, but you'd expect at least a 1.0. We didn't get that. But also, everyone, pretty much, except in the occasional series, looked way below their normal play level. We know historically Tier 1 teams hate playing these online cups and online qualifiers and tend to underperform. They don't take it seriously. But it's just not a good look. It gave me a bit of a giggle. And it's nice to see Big still just rolling. Big still rolling online.
If we're talking about Tier 1 teams not liking to play these cups, I mean, Big is still here. They won.
A big Tier 1? Are we extending Tier 1 to Big? Because I wouldn't, personally.
I mean, Tabsen and Mantu would be, sure. Like, surely.
Historically, yeah.
Yeah, and they didn't underperform. Like, they didn't have any.
But we also don't consider the merchant state of Venice to be like an elite world superpower. So it's the same thing here. Like, just because it was doesn't mean it is. So I'll give them tier 1.5.
Well,
that's kind of where they fit.
They probably consider themselves to be a bit too big for this online event, right? Like, at least Tabsen must think, I was in a Cologne final. Like at least Tabsen must be sitting there like. Yeah, he must be thinking like, man, 5 years ago, me and Gobby, we were in a Cologne final. Now I'm here. But like, they probably consider themselves to be tier 1, and they don't get these like mental ghosts that G2 maybe have, unless they are just shit. Like, I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, what do they've got upcoming? They've got Yala Compass Fall 2023. Oh, and they are playing in Blast,
God, are they?
Of course. They're playing in Blast, Spring Groups, and Pro League after that. So they've got some real tier 1 events. And then Big. I'm talking about Big.
No, shit. Sorry, I thought it was G2 we were talking about.
No, G2 obviously playing in the World Finals. This was probably prep for that, but it's not a pretty result. Like, they've probably found a lot of things to work on, and it's a good. I'm glad I didn't pick them. Let's put it that way. When I previewed the Blast Premier World Finals, I'm glad I didn't pick them, because this is not a great version of G2, and I don't see it working yet. We'll give them another 3 months, but. Rough start. Very funny to watch them lose, though. As always, the threads, the comments, the chat, everything was entertaining. We saw all the typical pleb reactions, and a good time was had. So we're going to jump off now. We're going to finish this up. It's only been a casual 100 minutes of this. So hopefully that ruins your Sunday to everyone who watches. I'm sure it's a very packed episode. So there's a lot to talk about, a lot to discuss. I'm going to have fun making the timestamps afterwards. So yeah, thank you, Quack, for joining me. Let's go watch some CS.
Thanks for having me.
Have a like if you enjoyed it. Leave your comments, of course, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.